when we're looking at how we organize collaboration and leadership, it's quite interesting time nowadays. I feel somehow it's like in the time when humankind thought we should be able to fly. There were always some crazy guys going with feathers down the cliffs, but then there was a time when humankind thought, okay, now the time is ready. We should have all the insights, we have the materials, therefore we should be able to fly. And then there were a lot of people around the world trying to build airplanes. And more or less at the same time. And interestingly enough, most of them tried it and the airplanes didn't take up. Or if they took off, they crashed down. That means huge mistakes, if you want to say so. But all these failures, all these bad landings were necessary to learn. And then one day, those brothers got an airplane to fly. Until then, a lot of people were thinking, flying, of course, it's the dream of humankind, but it will never happen. But then it was possible, and the moment an airplane was flying, it was not a question about is it possible or not, it was only the question how to improve it further. And we are more or less in the same area, and I want to take another analogy. When the car was invented, it was almost impossible for people to drive because it was still steered like you were steering horses. Didn't work. And the moment they invented the steering wheel, it was possible. That means there are a lot of things that are necessary to make this happen. And what I think is that in leadership and collaboration within companies, we are more or less moving from a train system to an individual traffic system. In the train system, you have clear plans, you have rails, you have the trains, there's one conductor at the front driving the train, and all the others can jump in and jump off. That's it. And now we want to introduce individual traffic. And it seems obvious that it's not that easy to make this happen. We all feel somehow the way we organize collaboration within companies is somehow not satisfying anymore. It is too slow, it is not agile enough, it's not innovative enough, it doesn't use the full potential of all the people, etc., etc. And we think we should be able to fly, but we don't know how to do that. And what we have learned the hard way is when we change things, and especially when we change systems, we have to think in 3 dimensions. One dimension is the organization. Yeah, you need clear rules. In individual traffic, you have the rule to drive on the right side, or on another side if you're coming on another country, but you drive on one side of the street. Without this rule, every encounter of 2 cars, you would have to negotiate, go we right, go we left. It would be very cumbersome. You would have a lot of frustration, a lot of accidents, and the traffic wouldn't flow. And if you have this clear rule, and people obey by this rule, then traffic works better. And that's something that we have to learn when we now talk about new leadership, new ways of organization. It's more or less that we say, okay, you drove by the trains till now. Now it's your car, drive. And if we don't have clear rules and they are not fully understood or not fully obeyed, there are accidents. It's happening normally. And then we are angry and say it doesn't work. That means in one dimension we have to have a good organization. The other is the competences of the people. In traffic, what do? We learn the rules and we train to drive. It's not only in the classroom that we learn how to drive. We go in a car and we drive. Real life. And we have an instructor on our side. If something happens and it's dangerous, he can jump in. The other side just gives feedback and so on. And then we train it as long as it becomes natural. That means when I want to turn right, I look, I put the sign, and then I turn. That becomes a natural routine. And we have so many things in our companies that we think we should change, but we don't train it that good that it becomes a natural routine. And then whenever there's a difficult situation, we fall back to our old habits. It means we have to train it. And the nice thing about competence is not only being able to, but also being allowed to. The competence is also I'm allowed to. And in traffic, it's I get a driver's license at one point in time, and with this driver's license, I'm allowed to drive. Nobody can tell me how to drive, when to drive, with whom to drive, with what car, on what route. I can decide. And often in companies, there's some modern delegation of authority, and the moment these people drive in a different direction than the one the authority thought, he says, no, not that way. Yeah? Sometimes it's more modern, sometimes less modern, sometimes you mob the people back on the road you don't want. But that's difficult, yeah? And even especially when there are accidents, then we say, well, obviously it doesn't work, therefore take away all the driver's licenses. And in traffic, we know accidents happen. And we know it's part of the system. And that's also something that we have to learn, that when we're doing other traffic, that we also have to cope with accidents. And it's not that in our actual organizations there are not accidents. It's like a train accident. Fewer accidents, but when they happen, they're very grave. And the last dimension is infrastructure. Obviously, when you're coming from trains to cars, you need streets, you need traffic lights, you need pedestrians crossings, and so on, roundabouts. It's a different infrastructure than we have for trains. And the same is true in organizations. We cannot expect that an organization with a different system works on the same infrastructure that we have today. That means that starts obviously with software to coordinate things, but it goes much further. How is the design of offices? But even what is the design of a meeting? Yeah. Nowadays, some designs of meetings start with a check-in. How do you feel? In early days, it didn't matter how you felt. You just had to execute. Now we start, how do you feel? Everyone checks in and says, how I feel. Whatever. That means there are a lot of things that is the infrastructure that is more or less a driver and enabler. And coming back to this example, if you ask the McKinseys to make a reorganization, they come in, they reorganize your company, everyone gets a new job title, a new boss, a new department, but everything stays the same. Or you say, I want to change, therefore we educate all our leaders, or we educate all our people, they go to a classroom, they come back, nothing changes. And then where we came from, we are the guys who say, okay, we install your app, yeah, and that will solve your problem, and it doesn't solve the problem. That means only by integrating all three dimensions, we can produce real change. But obviously it's not so clear how to do that. And it's a very confusing time, because there are a lot of things going on and we don't know exactly what's good, what's not good, and so on, because we don't know yet how to make an airplane fly. And there are a lot of people trying. And what we did is we developed such a map for us to understand what challenge we are in, at least out of our perspective, and how we can innovate in this area. And the dimension of our map is on one side the organizational design of a company. And there's one line of command, that is the very classic that we had in the Industrial Revolution. One line, there's a CEO, and it goes down and it goes up. One line, very easy. When we look nowadays, nobody only has one boss. We have matrix organizations, we have project organizations, we have whatever, a lot of things. That means the one line of organization is long history. And we believe that in the future we will have a lot of lines of commands. That means leadership will be more and more distributed than ever. And that means we will work with a lot of bosses and a lot of different constellations. And sometimes we will be the boss, and sometimes others will be the boss. And the other design dimension is what is the role of us as employees. And I'm talking about the role. We don't believe it's a question of personality. Yeah. Sometimes you have to lead, and sometimes you have to follow. And what does this mean? When we now build our map, on one side we have this clear command and control. We have one line of command, all the people are following, that's the perfect system in the Industrial Revolution. Without this system, we wouldn't have supercomputers in our pockets. But now what's happening is more and more people do what they think, what is the right thing to do, although there are processes and rules that would not allow it. Yeah, that's what we call shadow organizations, the shortcut to do things, to make customers happy, to get things done. That means there are a lot of people taking the lead, although the organization wouldn't allow it from the concept. And a lot of companies only survive because of these shadow organizations. Without these shadow organizations, they would die in bureaucracy. But the shadow is also dangerous. Yeah? On one side, people can sleep in the shadow without being discovered, that's okay. But they can also program some combustion engine programs or some industrial financial products. Yeah? Nobody knows and sees what's going on. That means it's a huge erosion of authority. If I see that my boss doesn't care what she got told, why should I care what she tells me? And how can I assume that my people do what I tell them? No. It's done. No authority anymore. And therefore, what now a lot of companies do, top management flies to Silicon Valley. It's like a group therapy. They go through different startups, see what's going on, how this new world works. Then they come back and say, okay, now we know it. Okay, we do Kanban, Scrum, pivoting, Agile, whatever. Yeah, organize yourself. And then what's happening is, after the first euphoria, wow, cool, we can do it ourselves, we end up in total chaos. Because earlier days, when you wanted to get something done, and you had a colleague who didn't want or couldn't do help, you went to the boss, you had a conflict, boss decided, fine. Some were unhappy, some were happy, it was going forward. Now, you're sitting together in a group of people, and you have to convince all of them to join your cause. And even if all they agree it's a good cause, but sorry, one of these people say, I don't have the time. I would like to, but I don't have the time. You cannot proceed. That means everyone in an organization can no, and nobody can say yes. That means you have a lot of energy, but without any gear. Yeah, it's just running idle. And you don't get things done. It's the overstrained organization. And then, of course, we all have experienced teams where an agile work works perfectly long before we have known this term of agile work networks. Yeah? Just teams that work. That works. They exist. Well, what we started at the University of St. Gallen, and the first impulse always is right top is the best. You have to strive for that. And what we have learned is what we have to find is an operating system that modernizes command and control and innovates in agile networks. And it sounds a little bit silly, therefore I make another analogy that you understand what we're meaning by modernizing command and control. If it would paint a picture of control, we probably would paint a policeman who measures the speed we're driving, and if you're driving too fast, we get a fine. That is how we learn control. That is the police, that is the teacher, that is the parents, that is the boss. That's how control works. Now the interesting part is that in traffic, we now have this displays of speed. If you're driving by and you're driving nicely, it's green and the smiley smiles at you. If you're driving too fast, it's red and the smiley looks angry. And interestingly enough, almost all drivers adjust their speed to what is allowed. And now let's look what's happening. This information on the display screen is redundant. I have the same information on my car. Nothing new, nothing new. I know I don't get flashed, I don't get fined. I know that. Nevertheless, I adjust my speed. Why is this? And there's a lot of research in psychology, and my translation as a houseman is because this information is outside of my car, objectively transparent to others. That means everyone else can see, not, wow, this guy was fast. They can say, wow, this guy went 50 in a 30 so. Yeah? Transparently objectively accessible for others. That reminds me, I don't want to be too fast. It's a reminder, it's a nudge. And then I slow down. Now let's transfer this to an example in a company. Let's talk about expenses. Most expense rules of a company are at least as thick as the traffic rules of a country. Yeah? And we have a lot of policemen trying to find people and correct the behavior if this finds it's not well done. And now there are digital native organizations that have a total different expense rules. One sentence. What is in the best interest of the company? That's the rule. And the only additional thing they're doing is they're having all expense slips transparent from the CEO to the doorman. All. And now what's happening? Yeah? For these important customer dinners at the very luxurious restaurants, the guys think, oh shit, it could be seen by others. And then you start with self-control. And then obviously some peers can think, well, this guy, I think he's always expending a lot of money for things that is not really necessary. And then they can look into the system and put a red flag. You even can put a little bit of big data and say, okay, I make a matrix of performance and expenses, and so on. And then you need much less policemen because you have self-control and peer control. And obviously that wasn't possible earlier days, yeah? As these speed displays were not technically possible to produce at a reasonable amount of money. It was also not possible to invite all your employees to go to the finance department and to go through the expense files. Now we have technology and we can make it possible. And by this technology, it enables us to define control in a new way. That's just one example. It means there are a lot of things that we can think of how can we bring command and control to the 21st century. That's one. And the other thing is for HR networks. I think everyone is at least a little bit exaggerating if he or she says, I know how HR world works. Yeah. We don't know it yet. I haven't seen an airplane flying. There's some that are gliding quite long and quite impressive, but it's not. I don't see yet the companies flying. I was asked one day, how would you recognize that a company is flying? I said, I don't know. The only thing that I know, this company will be 10 times faster and it will be 10 times easier and more fun to work there. Because they're flying, they don't have to hike the mountains and go down the mountains and the valleys, they just fly over. But I haven't seen it. But that means we have to do these experiments, and that's something that we also learned the hard way. Sometimes we had ideas, what we want to do, and then we put all the people in the airplane and said, okay, let's try if it flies. Now we understand, okay, it's an experiment. That means we ask people who are the volunteers that want to join this experiment, and then we don't expect that it flies from the beginning. We try it out, it will crash, we all know that. We try to learn, we try to improve, and we do it and 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 do it again. That means a lot of iterations to improve it. Like the Edison. Yeah? He did it 20,000 times. 20,000 times he tried to build a light bulb. Till he said, okay, now it's perfect. We in management, when we do experiments, most of the time we have an idea, and nowadays we say, okay, it's an experiment. That means we don't have to think through properly, because it's an experiment. Then we do the experiment. If it's good, we say, hey, cool, it worked. If it failed, we say, okay, it was an experiment, please give me applause, I failed. Yeah? That's stupid. What we should do if we do experiments, we should think throughout how we want to do it. We build up an experimental environment as a physician and the natural scientists, not like we as social scientists. We try it out, we measure the result, we try to learn, we try to improve it the next time, and the next time, and the next time, till it works. And someday we will have some answers to certain of these questions. And all the time, just to remind you, on the 3 dimensions, we have to think in organization, people, and infrastructure to make these things happen. Some of our experiments that you understand what we're talking about, some are not even that big experiments. The starting point is that we say every employee defines her or his job. It sounds very strange because you get hired from a company, there's a job description you apply to, why should you define your job? But that was Peter Drucker 1950, yeah? That's not very new. Because we are knowledge workers. We need our own orientation, our own compass, what is important and what not. That is nothing that can be delegated. We have to think through what is our job, what should it be, how do we judge the quality of our work, what do we have to improve, what hinders our work, what can we learn, what do we have to learn, what can we teach. Very few simple questions, and we have to think through them often to know what is important and not, that we can decide to work on the important things and not on the not important things. Very easy, can be done in every organization, even if I'm living in the harshest dictatorship on earth in a company, I can say, okay, I define my job. And I even can dare to go to my boss and say, okay, I thought through my job, I think this is my job and this is what I want to change and this is what I can do better, blah, blah, blah. And I want your feedback. There's seldom a boss who says, no, I don't spend the time with you. It means that's something that you can do for yourself, and you can also do it with your team. Even though the processes of a company don't provide such things, you can do it. Just do it. And you will see it's incredible. Of course, it takes time. But you save more time of people doing the wrong things than what you spend on this little measure. The other thing is also an airplane that almost quite flies is team recruiting in our company. People recruit their colleagues. It's not HR, it's not the boss alone. It's always the whole team. And that means when the colleagues say, or when you have a job ad, just think of that. You have your job ad. Normally we have the job ad, we, the company XY searches for you. This changes, you see the pictures of all the people and say, we, the team you will work with in the future, we search for you.
Just wanted to, that's a very good idea, but what if you have time constraint? This is again a democracy, right? People then, are you just talking of advertising, or even when recruiting, these guys will be part of the selection process?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if you have a time constraint and you can solve your problem easier the other way, that's fine, go away. I don't propagate it's the only way. But what I see is that often the question is more to find the right people. And therefore, if you have more people using their network to win over candidates, you're faster. If you have a lot of candidates and you say all of them are quite good or some of them are quite good, you don't need it. It's fine. Yeah? There are some aspects you could need it because you say it's better for onboarding, it's better to have the team on board and so on, but it's not necessary. But whenever you say it's difficult to find the right people and to convince them to join the company, then to have all the people engaged in this hunt increases your chances that you find the right person. But of course, the interesting part, all of these things will bring up efforts that you normally don't see into light. I make another example just to jump on that. In our company, leaders get elected. Every year we elect our leadership. Every team leader, up to the CEO, up to the chairman, I'm elected by our employees. And that sounds crazy because it takes a lot of time and it's really a very uncomfortable process, a lot of energy spent there and so on. And every year we ask ourselves, is it the right thing to do again? But the interesting point is, this energy you see, you can measure it and you can see it and you say it's a lot of energy. But if you don't have these processes transparently open, you have all this energy spent in back rooms, trying to lobby, trying to put elbows in one direction or the other, even trying to negatively impact others or to sabotage others. That is all hidden energy. You don't see it, therefore it seems fine. We take it up, and I'm sure we use less energy than the energy that's normally spent in a company on this process. But we have it transparent. Yeah.
I think it's really interesting to change every year, but isn't it a very short period a year? Like
I said
to
we
ramp up all the activities and so on.
I said we elect every year. I did not say we change every year. Most of the elections, of leadership elections, are quite boring. We have one candidate, that's the incumbent, and he gets re-elected. It's so boring that a lot of our employees said that's pseudo-democracy, yeah, because they don't have a choice. What I say is no, it's fine. Because most of the time, once a year, a leader sits down and thinks through what is my job now in the next year. Normally, if you're a leader, you don't do that. I'm the leader, I lead. But to sit down, to think through what is my job, what is expected from me the next year, and also to gather input from feedback from others, and then to write it down and also to explain it to the team. And on the other side, also the team has to think through what do I expect from the leader and make it explicit and then discuss about it and then manage expectations and find the right way. That is the worth of this process if there's only one candidate. If you have a good leader, the leader works good, the team is happy with that, no need to change. Then it's just a confirmation. Yeah? But this process leads that just out of the system, people have to think through what is their job and to make it explicit. And that's a good thing. And then if a leader is not functional anymore, out of whatever reason, yeah, bored out, burned out, whatever, private things, whatever, then most of the time, another candidate comes up through the ranks. And then even then, most of the time in our company, it's even then not the choice between two candidates, because often the incumbent then steps down before the election comes, because he wants to prevent to have a loss in the election, to save the face. And that's also okay, because the result is fine. You changed the system. You changed, but it means it's a very natural way, systematically once a year to think, am I the right person? Is my team thinking I'm the right person? If not, then there's a change.
Can I ask, how big is your organization?
We as a company, we are now few hundred employees. But we're in a group with about 3,000 employees. And there we also now experimenting with leadership election in different levels. And I don't say it's, well, put it that way. I'm convinced every leader is elected by his employees every day. Because the question if your employees follow you or not is what makes a leader. And nowadays, as a leader, you don't have to control over your employees what they're doing. And what we're doing is we just make it transparent. Has this leader followership or not? And if not, then we have to change something. And just to come in the concept, what happened out of that, we got spiral careers. Normally you have chimney careers in companies. Up, 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 out. Yeah? In our company, we now have spiral careers. That means you start somewhere, you take over responsibility, and then one time you step back, but not away of the company, you leave the company, but you go back into the team you were leading, and most of the time, one of your employees ends up being your boss. That sounds really crazy. I experienced more than 1 year, and at the beginning it's really very unusual feeling. But interestingly enough, when we look in other organizations, for example, volunteer organizations, sports clubs, music clubs, whatever, you join as normal member, then one day they ask you, come on, now you do the finances, or now you do the president, you do it, and after a certain period of time say, okay, now I'm done, I go back, someone else has to do it. And then you're a normal member again. And that's totally normal. It's interesting how the system and how we organize the system and what role models we have has an impact on if this is normal or not. Another example, when you look at the American president, after 2 terms, this president steps back. And Obama, for example, was happy to step back before he known who would be his successor, and looked forward to golf. In Germany, we have the chancellor, and this chancellor has to make at least the Adenauer even longer. And all the chancellors in my living memory lost when they went from the office. They were the losers. Kohl, Schröder, whatever. And we will see it probably now again with Merkel. They stick so as long to the job till it doesn't work anymore out of whatever reasons, and then they're losers, and then they lose their face, and all these things. Of course, history looks differently at it, but in this moment, it makes it very difficult to step down. And in America, it's usual. In the US, it's normal. That they could have come up with a different story. And say, okay, I'm now the biggest man, and therefore I stay the king. And that's quite an interesting part. It's for us, I have seen that it's also with myself, it's one of the greatest leadership courses, leadership teachings that you can have is to work under your successor. This successor is doing exactly the job you were doing before. You know exactly how this person should do it, and you learn a lot. Sometimes you learn something your successor learns something. I could talk about a lot of other things, how we try to do innovation, salaries. We believe salaries have to become more agile too in an organization, moving upwards and moving downwards. It's also something that we cannot imagine in a company that salaries go downwards, that they stay in a company and get a salary cut. Not imaginable. But if you're living in a village and we have two bakeries, and one is doing a good bread and one doesn't do a good bread, I go to the bakery with the good bread and give them guy always a salary increase. And if I have to once go to the other one and I'm disappointed, then I not even cut the salary of this person because I don't go anymore. No, I even post online what shitty bread I got there. Yeah? In the marketplace, it's totally normal for us. In a company, it's unthinkable. And that is something that will change. We will have much more entrepreneurs within companies that have to take over their own destiny at a certain point of time. And of course, that means also the salary moves. And that can be also a good thing. For example, I want to have spent more time with my family. And therefore, I reduce a little bit my salary, but therefore I have the right to spend more time with my family. Whatever. There are a lot of things going on. Swarming. I wanted to shortly go, and then I hope for discussions. I wanted to shortly go to the topic of lead and follow, because I was always thinking in our company a lot of things are not working well, obviously because we're not flying yet. That means you can imagine all our competitors are going with railways, and we say, okay, we try to fly. But of course we have to do business, that means we have to proceed. That means we always jump into the airplane, we try something out, we fall down, a lot of injuries, then we get out, we build it up again, and we fly again. And although we have all this additional energy and efforts and mistakes, overall we are economically more successful than our competitors. And someone was asking, how does this work? And my explanation now is that there's so much energy unused in other organizations that we can waste a lot of energy seeing this energy is wasted, because our people are really burning and doing things with a lot of energy. But of course we have to be very honest and also careful. If people are burning, they can also burn out. And there are also some people that say, sorry, you're crazy guys, yeah. I go on the train, that's an easy way to go. Yeah. Therefore it's not, people always think it's a paradise that we're having. No, we have a paradise hell. Yeah, really both sides. Talking about leadership, it's quite interesting. When you are a leader and you're a leader for a certain period of time, it's always that people cannot solve a problem. You have to jump in and you solve it, because you can solve it. And then with time you think you're the Superman. And interesting enough, for example, if you're a judge, it's the same. Yeah, you have two parties that disagree. You are the judge. They come, you hear their causes, you decide, problem solved. In the juridical system, the judge normally doesn't think he is the great hero, the smartest guy in the room. He understands, it's my role. In a company, because we have all these heroes, the hero CEOs, and everyone is Steve Jobs, it's a personality trait. Yeah? And then, of course, if you realize that day in, day out, you think you're the smartest guy in the room and everyone else is an idiot. That's normal, yeah, because we have this perception. If I would see the job as a leader as just a role, and what I can do is out of my role and not out of my personality, it would make it much easier, but we're not there. And the interesting part on the other side, if a group of people, a group of peers has a problem, we always ask for the one to save us. It's so difficult to solve a problem under peers. We always delegate upwards. Yeah, that's not in your organization, but in a lot of others. And let's talk about society. Yeah, when there's a problem, we always ask, okay, Merkel has to save Europe. No one else. It's only the leader who can do that. And interestingly enough, I've read an article that earlier days kids were playing a lot of time alone, and when they had a conflict, they had to solve it. Now kids always have a superior there, parent, whatever, looking at the kids, and whenever they have a conflict, they look at this person to solve it. That starts very early to get ingrained in our nature that there's someone upwards that has to solve a peer problem. For example, if you're working in a group of people and we have a colleague who doesn't perform, most of the time what happens, first we think, what a stupid guy. Then I think my boss should do something. No, why doesn't he do it? He's stupid, he's weak, he's lazy, he doesn't see it, whatever, incompetent. Shit with boss. I'm fine out. And of course in the evening I go drink a beer with this colleague because I like this as a person, this person. To come to the idea that we go to this person and say, hey, you're doing a shitty job, you should do better, we would not think of that. And this person would say, hey, are you crazy? You're not my boss. But that's exactly what has to happen. We have to do more on a peer level because we will have shared responsibility. And interesting enough, there's this comps in the middle, the sandwich positions, and we're perfectly fine schizophrenic. Our people are all stupid, and we are the Superman towards them. But upwards, if I have a conflict with my colleagues, my boss has to solve it. Yeah? It's really interesting. We can do that perfectly. Yeah? We're totally schizophrenic in this area. And it's often when I'm discussing with leaders about our concepts, and they say, well, are your people able to? And then they say, well, I would help to, but they don't take over responsibility, they don't take over leadership. I don't know. They cannot do that. And then I'm interested in asking, and do you think you are doing it? You could do it. You take over responsibility. Yes, I do. And then the question is, do you think your bosses could think the same of you than you think of your people? That's exactly the point. Yeah, it's really interesting. And therefore, we're sharing nowadays everything from cat videos, apartments, taxi cabs, and the only thing that seems unshareable is leadership. We cannot think of an instance that leadership is shared. And that's what we believe in. In the future, leadership will be shared. That means everyone has to lead himself, herself, a certain task, sometimes even other teams. And everyone has to follow. That means even me as a chairman, I have to follow in a project team the leader of the project. And that's quite difficult. It's really difficult. Because I sometimes make these huge disclaimers. Hey, sorry, that is a question. That is not a mandate, that is not an order, that is nothing. It's just a question. I want to understand something. Not seldom, 2 weeks later, I ask, why is this like that? And then another employee tells me, you wanted it like that. Yeah? No, I asked the question. Yeah? That means it's so ingrained in our thing that whatever from leader comes is an order, and especially now the modern leaders, they don't give you an order anymore. They make questions or proposals, therefore everything is an order, yeah, nowadays. It's really difficult. It's really difficult. It's frustrating for the employees, it's frustrating for the people that want to go down from the throne and talk and work with the people. And then when you come with customers, it's even worse. I was working on a huge project with a big manufacturer in Germany, and I was working as an individual contributor in this team. There was a team lead, there were the high-ups, and I was just a normal person. First, the customer was really astonished to see the co-founder and chairman working on a desk. And then when there was a presentation, I wasn't even presenting because I was not the big guy on the stage. It was inconceivable for them how this works. And what we try to find out now is a way how we can manage it, that we can lead and follow in a company in a shared way. And of course, everything what you have heard about leadership is true. The question is what is additionally that you can make shared leadership work. And one is, if I work in a shared leadership, first I have to clarify that I lead. Because earlier days, an org chart is quite easy. It answers a lot of questions. Yeah? Who leads? The person in the box. Who solves conflicts? The person in the box. Who knows who I have to address? The person in the box. All is the person in the box. It's a huge reduction of complexity. Everything is in the person in the box. The moment we start saying, okay, we all are shared leaders. Who is responsible for a certain task? I don't know. Yeah, it's difficult to understand, and therefore we understand we need technology for that, because at least if I would have a software where I could type in who's responsible for that and get an answer, it would be helpful, because now it's total chaos then. Okay, but what's often happening in this modern team works, we have a lot of people joining a task, everyone sits there, everyone has a great opinion and ideas what to do, but nobody leads. Everyone contributes, nobody leads. That means for all the topics where you are part of this team, you first have to decide yourself, do I want to lead here? And if I decide against leading here, I understand I will follow whoever leads. But to clarify who leads is very important, and I have to consciously decide what things I lead and what others I don't. Second, if I decide I want to lead, then I have to decide how do I want to lead. And it's not for the whole project always the same style, but for all the topics. And that's something just to clarify what we mean with operating system. For example, how do we get to decisions? There's of course dictatorship and total chaos that's outside of a good operating system, but within there's a huge range of how I can do decisions. Mode one is, I decide and I just explain it. That's something that's not modern anymore, but it's so important that we have leaders that sometimes, especially when it's unimportant tasks, especially when it's very clear, it's just someone who has to decide, it's not a big thing, then it's really good that one takes over leadership and decides and just says, it's like that. Yeah? Of course, we also have then the people that say, okay, he decided or she decided and we follow. But that saves a lot of energy. And it should be still a mode of leading, just I decide and I explain it. Fine. Not for the very important things, but for the unimportant things, it's perfectly easy. The next step is, the next mode is to involve people. That means I say, I still decide, but I want to have your opinion. That means I come before I make my decision and ask you for input. Or when I have thought through and I have an idea of what I want to do as a solution, I go and ask some people, what would you think if I would decide this way? What would your feedback on that? And then I can get input on my proposal, I can refine it, and then I decide. Yeah? And then of course I have to explain it. But that's always me in the driver's seat. I lead, I decide, and I use the people depending on how I think is fit. And then when we jump to more self-organizing, mode 3 is, we all decide together, all in this room, we all decide together, and I provide the decision infrastructure. Because normally when we do decisions in a team, modern way, the default way of deciding is consent. Yeah? Everyone has to agree. If not, it doesn't work. If I'm the decision leader and I have just one vote, but I can say, okay, we decide democratically. This is the problem. Everyone the next 2 weeks can propose solutions, everyone. Then we will discuss the solutions, then we'll have 1 week to contemplate, and then we will have a democratic vote. The solution with the most votes is selected. Then we have a very clear infrastructure of decision and we come to decision very efficiently because it's time boxed. Yeah? Democratic decisions not always slow. Sometimes they're even too fast. There are a lot of now different decision modes. You can have systematic consenting, you can have vetoes, you can have whatever, different majorities, and so on. It means I feel responsible for the decision infrastructure, but we decide together. In the decision, I just have one vote, or I'm the one who has the vote in whatever. Yeah? There are a lot of things. But I feel responsible to have a decision infrastructure that the team can come up with a good decision in a reasonable time. And then mode 4 is we are such a good team, we don't need someone who leads through the decision, because we are used to do these decisions. It's like in a chess combo. And then I'm more responsible for the interface to all the others than within the team. Okay, that means I decide how do I want to lead. That was just one example. And then once I have decided I want to lead and I know how to lead, then I come up and say, are you agreeing that I lead? And most of the time, interesting enough, there are not that many people that say I want to lead. Then it's fine. But still, you would have to agree with, because if I lead, you have to follow me. And if there's someone else who says, no, I want to lead, then it's fine. Then we have 2 candidates. And then the followers decide who is the leader. Very easy. Yeah? And what you shouldn't do is don't delegate unpleasant decisions and unpleasant leadership tasks. That is so modern. For example, if you're the leader of the support team and you have to decide who does the weekend shift and who does the Christmas shift. Earlier days, a leader had said, okay, I think through, I really try to make best that people with family don't have the Christmas shift and so on. Try to think through and make a good plan. Then I presented, everyone is angry, everyone is crazy at me, everyone shouts at me, but I put it out, that's the plan, no discussion. Then people change a little bit in the backyards and then it's fine. Now modern leader says, okay, I don't like it that you always shout at me when I propose these plans, do it yourself. And then the team sits together, plays the game, who moves first has lost. And it takes a lot of time, a lot of negative energy, and it doesn't produce better results. That means don't delegate unpleasant decisions. And if you want to do it in a new way, you of course can do it, but then you provide the infrastructure. You say, okay, you decide how you do the weekend shifts and the Christmas shifts, but first tell me what you would need. Do you need additional budget? Do you need the possibility to swap times? Whatever, yeah, just to get the instruments that you can come up with a decision that works. And what also important, because there are a lot of things coming in and we take over this leadership and this leadership, it's easy to forget that we were leading certain things. That means never stop leading a topic. If not, you have finished it, you have handed over, or you officially buried it. You say, okay, I stopped this, I was not successful, whatever, but I communicate to everyone, I stopped leading. Because if not, it's really chaos that happens. And last point, how to follow in this thing, even as a leader, is first, I have to support my leaders to succeed. That sounds really no, yeah, of course. But think of how often your boss decides something you're not convinced of and you more or less try to prove the point that he's wrong. And I have experienced it. As I said, I was CEO of the company that I co-founded, and then I stepped down. My successor was taking over, and it's totally human. Yeah? I somehow felt personal satisfaction that he failed in a thing that I thought I could do better. That is normal, yeah? But we should try not to live it out. We have to see, okay, I want this guy to succeed. And if it's not a one-way direction, yeah, normally there's always the leader up and I serve this leader, then it's somehow a little bit making you fatigue and it's not very nice. But if I am in a constellation where sometimes I'm the leader and I ask you to make me successful, and sometimes we change roles and you are the leader and I make you successful, then it's a mutual thing that makes it easier. But nevertheless, make your leader to support. And then if you have a good idea, you would do it differently, provide it as a gift. Yeah, it's like a t-shirt. They give you a t-shirt. I hope you like it and you wear it. If you don't like it, I cannot force you. And I always thought it's difficult when I gave my successor feedback and he did not take my feedback. I thought this is the hardest part. It isn't. The harder part is he takes your feedback and is successful with it. Because it's his success. Yeah? If you have this t-shirt and you get big compliments, hey, nice t-shirt, you will not ever say, hey, but I got it from Hermann. No, you say thank you. And that felt also wrong. Yeah? This guy is using my good ideas and being successful with them and not even mentioning me. And it was really hard till I realized, as a leader, obviously you get so many inputs, and one genuine task of your leader is to decide what input to take and what not. Therefore, it's his or her success to be successful with my feedback, because even when I give a bad feedback and this person follows my feedback and then has a big mistake, this person cannot stay on stage and say, okay, but it was Hermann telling me I should do that. Yeah? That means that's okay, but we have to learn it. And I give this gift, and even if this person decides not to take my feedback, I try to make this person successful going the other way. And even in doubt, when I don't know if it's good or bad, I follow and let's see how the results speak. Because often I was surprised that although I thought it's not a good way, it was a good way. Sometimes even better than I would have expected it for me. And of course, there has to be the possibility not to follow. Has to be a possibility. And for me, not to follow means, first I have to say it's really important thing. If it's not important, it's not important. You can follow. It's not important. Yeah. We have so many discussions in organizations when someone has a little bit a better idea and thinks that's better, and then they're discussing for weeks. If it's not important, I provide my feedback and I follow. If it's important, and I think my way is much better, I'm convinced my way is much better, because if it's a little bit better, but this guy doesn't take it because he doesn't take my feedback, I gave him my feedback, then the result will not be better. Yeah. Obviously, because I would force this person to do something that he or she is not convinced of. Will not be a better result. That means my way has to be much better, and I have to be sure that the way he or she is going will lead to disaster. Yeah? Disaster, really a bad thing happen. Then I don't follow. And then don't following doesn't mean I go to the coffee table, talk with my colleagues, and then sabotage my boss. No. Not following means I go to this person and say, hey, Hermann, in this area I don't follow you. Transparently, openly, I don't follow you because of these and these reasons. And then you have a conflict, and then you have to solve the conflict. And if it's towards my boss, my hierarchical boss, it's really difficult, but it's good. Try it out. To say, sorry, I don't follow you. I don't make it behind your back. I hope you appreciate that. I tell you in your face, I don't follow you. You can give this order to someone else, or whatever, but I don't follow you there. I don't want to force you to do it my way. I just don't follow you. I gave you my feedback how I would do it. And if you're a leader and you delegated the responsibility to a person, and you should follow, and now you say, okay, it's important, my way is much better, and this way this guy is doing leads to disaster, then I have to jump in. And I should not mob my team or my people doing that. Oh, you didn't think far enough. Think again. No, you provided your feedback, this person didn't take it, and it's really important, your way is much better, and the other thing leads to disaster, then you go and jump in and say, okay, sorry, here I order you to do it differently. Then you know you break the system consciously, but then you think it's important. If not, follow. And to make it easier, we tried to develop such cards. Whoever is interested, I'm happy to provide it, because it's still fully better stage, and I want to get feedback where we say, build the team, I elect the leader, I choose the game as a leader, and then how do I lead? The mode 1 is the solo star or the Formula 1. Yeah, the whole team makes this person a star. 2 is an orchestra or football, a soccer. where the maestro or the trainer, they don't play. They cannot force people to do certain things, and it's an interactive thing. And then going to mode 3, it's like a camera orchestra or team orienteering. And mode 4 is like jazz or off-piste skiing. Yeah? To have an analogy, what works and what not. And then we say, how do you lead? How do you follow? And then special cards, if I'm the leader, hey, I want you to follow me, or this is a foul, especially helpful for bosses that said, okay, we do jazz, and then they come and try to be the maestro. Yeah? You can say, okay, it's foul, and others as a follower, I want to give you this feedback as a gift, take it, but if you take it or not, I follow you. And of course, there has to be possibility to say, sorry, here I cannot follow you because I'm convinced it's a bad thing. That's just still better, but I would be happy if some would try it out in their teams and give me feedback what works, what doesn't work, how they would do it better. There was now a long thing. If there's one thing out of this hour that I presented some ideas, if there's one thing you should remember, I think, is if we are role models in following, if we know how to follow and we exercise followership and we make others understand how important following is, then I think leadership will work. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Hermann, for having provided us with input here. But question time.
Or critique, feedback, whatever.
It's more maybe a remark from my side. I mean, in your approach to self-organization, you seem to have peeled off completely, or at least partially, let's say, the dark side of human nature, ambitions, egos, little calculations, how to position myself in the eyes. I mean, this is completely outside of your presentation, more or less, let's say. I mean, that's how I felt it. Do you think it's realistically implementable in a scalable way in larger organizations, given all these human factors?
Two answers. One, I wouldn't say necessarily that our system, and we don't have a finished system yet, is the way to go. What I'm totally convinced is that organizations that will find a way how to integrate all the people in decision making and leadership, where we have shared leadership, shared followership, they will be much more successful. That means that organization that makes this happen will fly much faster and higher than others. I'm totally convinced that you see it everywhere. Yeah, you see it with Wikipedia, with TripAdvisor, with all these things out in the marketplace. There's where innovation happens first, and where's the fiercest competition. And then next stage is companies within, how they organize, and the next stage is societies. I'm convinced of all this, that's the move, because when you look at progress, first people couldn't speak, they were just connected by what they could see, and then with invention of the speech, there were much more connections between the people, and that made a huge advancement of humankind. Then the invention of writing was the next, where we made much more connection between people, making the network of the people more, and that was the next step of evolution. Then there was book printing, making even more connection with all the people, and now we have the internet making even more connection. That means the organization that makes these connections work, it's look chaotic, will be successful. Will it be our system? I don't know. But I totally agree with you. Most of the time we're now totally astonished that Facebook and the internet could also be used by the dark side of the world. Because we thought it will democratize everything and we are at the end of history. And now we realized, no, it's a technology. It can be used by the bad guys and it can be used by the good guys. Wow, what new epiphany, yeah? The nuclear energy. You can use it for the good, you can use it for the bad. TNT, you can use it for the good, you can use it for the bad. Yeah? And then you try to make a Nobel Prize to cover that up. But that's exactly the point. What we're now seeing is, yes, of course, it can be used by good guys and it can be used by bad guys. And of course, you have to take care how you handle it. And what we see is in the normal organizations nowadays, the dark side is somehow in the shadows, you don't see it. That means you feel good. And one day it explodes like a financial scandal or diesel engine scandal, whatever, then it explodes and it's massive damage. Massive damage. And I think in a transparent system, you will have these people, and they can even be for a certain time freewheeling. But I think they will be earlier seen. Yeah? And you can do earlier correction. And just to say, I think the bad guys are already much better in this type of organization. For example, if you look at ISIS, yeah, that is an agile network. There were people that were not well educated, they could not even read or write, and they were more or less defeating the American military with improvised explosive devices. Yeah. That means the bad guys are already on this game. Yeah? The question is, will we as the good guys also try to use this game and improve and be better? But of course it's not a paradise. Yeah? What I have seen is that if you have the right fundamentals in an organization, then these bad guys will be discovered earlier and then also jumped out earlier, because it's not only the bosses and the policemen trying to police the system, but everyone. Yeah? That's just one idea. For example, when we're now looking at bonuses are still most of the time individual bonuses. There's a lot of research that says it's stupid, but nevertheless we do it. And then look at the dynamics. I'm in a team in my boat, and I know it's an individual bonus. That means whenever someone is doing a bad job, I'm happy because that increases my chance to get a higher bonus. If we are in a boat and everyone gets the same bonus, everyone, then this guy who is lazy on my expense. And then I start saying, hey, you could do better because I don't want to feed you. It means it's more Darwinistic, this system. It's not easygoing, yeah? And therefore I think it's never black or white. But I agree, you have to be aware that there are people that will try to trick the system, and it seems it's easier than in other systems. I personally think it's not easier there. But it's a lot more about the values that you have in the network and the people being empowered to do such things and to make this householding of the system. And for example, if you're looking at Scrum and Agile, there's a lot how this team should work, but there's not a lot of how a team gets set up and how you could get rid of a team member you don't want anymore. And these are unsolved problems of a Scrum, because they say, I cannot handle that, and I think we have to solve it. And we have some, in our area in the company, for example, we had the team recruiting, we had the election of the leaders, and one day a team came and said, we want to fire this person. We said, okay. But in this case, we were agreeing, we already was almost also firing this person, we fired this person. 2 weeks later, another team came and said, we want to fire this person. And we said, oh, whoa, stop, yeah, it's too fast. Yeah? And then we had to try to find rules how we do that. And now it's more or less natural that also this householding comes as often from the team as from the classic leadership in our company. But it's not a paradise, not at all.
May I ask, how do you define leadership? So we were talking about leadership here.
Yeah.
What do you understand by this term?
It's quite funny because my explanation is difficult in English. It's easier in German, because in German there's the term Führungskraft. Yeah? It's more or less the Führungskraft we see as a person, but Führungskraft also, word by word translation, is the power to lead, yeah? Or the strength to lead. That means my definition of leadership is, it is a person that for a certain period of time or for a certain project or for whatever mission is taking the lead. And that means it's a task to take best care of the energy spent by the team. And I don't believe leadership is about providing a vision. Some leaders do, some others don't. Not necessary. I think it's really more or less to organize a team to save energy and to focus the energy on what the team wants to achieve. That is leadership, and as I said, can be on our easy world. There are four modes of leadership. I can be more or less the old kind patron, or I'm the Madonna or whatever, Formula 1 driver. I'm the maestro, and even if you're looking at maestros of orchestras, there are total different styles of leadership. From Karajan to now Kirilenko, for example. There's also a lot of moving, but still there's a clearly defined roles and so on. And for me, it's about making a team, providing the infrastructure for making a team successful. But at the end, I think most of the time the followers define the leader, also to define them and all that. But it's not an academic answer. I'm aware of that.
Well, I've got a question which went through my mind. I mean, you had the chance there to do this startup, right? You started in 2001, and then you learned the ropes there to actually to do that. But what about existing organizations? I mean, what about the transition? Have you observed examples there to do an organization that has learned it the other way, and then all of a sudden having to make a transition like that to things like that? Have you observed something or any experiences?
Thank you very much for asking these questions, because I think the main problem is, so I'm coming to our quadrant here. The main problem is we have so much hidden that we don't see. For example, talking about team recruiting. A lot of people saying, okay, in our organization that won't work because we have a huge organization, a lot of compliance, blah, 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 doesn't work. And then I'm saying, I'm sure in your organization you have people doing that. It means there is a leader where the team comes to the leader and says, hey, we need a new colleague. And then he's okay, I organize the budget. And then they're sitting together, defining the job requirements. Then the leader makes the job ad, but it was written by the team. Then the leader makes probably a pre-selection. Then the last candidates are presented to the team. They have a Schnuppertage, a working day, and probation day, or even week sometimes, or just going for drink of coffee. And then the leader says, okay, whom do you like most? And then the team says, this person and this person we wouldn't hire. And then the leader decides along the team and hires. Interesting enough, if you're looking from how we look at organizations, fine. Leader said we need someone, leader organized the budget, leader defined the job, leader decided for the person, leader hired, leader onboarded. Reality was totally different. But because we don't look at it, we don't see it that way. And even worse, we don't support this leader in the way he or she wants to do that. We just have our normal structure. And then, even worse, others don't even know that this way exists. They still are the Napoleons and think that's my way. I hire a person and say the next Monday here is your new team member. That means first part of the answer is I think there are a lot of hidden HR networks in even the worst organization. Yeah? Most of the time working in shadows, yeah? But they exist. First part of the answer. Second part of the answer, if we're now doing transformation projects and we are working with clients, we are on the journey of making such things happen in the 3 dimensions, then earlier days we made it, as always, and it's really funny, we said, okay, we think through a really good concept, we even make a pilot, and then if this pilot works, that means the first round was good, no big mistake, no big accidents, then we say, okay, let's go, roll it out. And that doesn't work. What we now understand is we do little test and learn environments with small teams, and we make so many iterations that it really works. The thing that we want to change, for example, feedback culture, or a new salary system, or a new performance system, or innovation culture, whatever. We do it in a team, we try out, we deviate, we iterate, and we do a lot of iterations. And interestingly enough, the moment we have found something that works, we don't have to roll it out. There is a roll in.
What does that mean?
Other people join because they want to do that too. If you have an airplane and this plane flies, there are a lot of people want to fly with your plane. Yeah? The moment it doesn't fly, nobody wants to join you. But the moment it flies, people want to join. A really dramatic example is when I said, okay, I'm not the right person anymore as CEO of the company that I founded, I proposed my successor, and as in our company, every major decision was done by all the team. We decided on that democratically. For me, it wasn't an election, but obviously, if you vote for a person to have a job, it's an election. Yeah? And then 3 months later, team leaders in our company came to us and said, we also want to be voted. And at first didn't understand it because they were wanted to be voted in the job they already had. That means the only result out of my perspective in this moment was they can lose their job if they lose, but they don't win anything if they win. Why do they want elections? And obviously we did it because the whole leadership team decided democratically we want to have elections. And by doing that, we have seen there's so much power in this. And therefore we have done it year after year. And that was a roll in. We didn't say, okay, that was now a good election, was a good example, just now every leader has to be elected. No, it was a roll in. And that's something that we see in a lot of different things that we try to make change virally. That means we make viral change. We try to make something work, and the moment it works, people will join. And then it grows to the natural boundaries of the system. For example, if you say, I want to increase the feedback culture, we're not honest enough. Then first you have to find out why feedback doesn't work in your organization, and that doesn't happen in your brain, it happens in doing it with real people. That means you try to find volunteers that say, okay, additional to my normal job, I want to work on a better idea of how feedback works in our company. And then you try different things. For example, after every meeting, there's a short feedback round. Yeah? 1 minute on paper, or we discuss about it, or you go out and you write in an app. You try a lot of things, and then you realize it's not only about the technology and infrastructure, it's also about the consequences of good and bad feedback. And then you try there certain things. What could be a good consequence for giving feedback or for not giving feedback, and so on. And then you iterate, you try out, and so on. And at the one day, you have the perfect thing. That means you have a clear set of rules, you have the competencies of the people, how to do it, and they are allowed to do it, and you have the infrastructure. And then one of these guys sit in a meeting and they have invited 3 others. And after the meeting, they do exactly that. And the 3 that are not part of that are suddenly also invited to give feedback, although they didn't do that. And then they experience it the first time. And if they think, wow, that's a good thing, then they ask, hey, how do you do that? And how do you do that? And then they do it in their own. That's how Scrum grow. That is now in the German-speaking market as this working out loud. That's also something like a movement. It's a movement that starts, and then more and more people join, and then you have a change. And that's the way how I would do that. And especially making those who already are working differently just in the shadow, making them be seen, and supporting them to do their job better in the light than in the shadows. And that's how you start, but it's not a huge project, and we tried to frame the claim, your last reorganization ever. Yeah, reorganization is not the way to go.
Other questions, comments?
I have another question. So, is there any implication, from the self-organization structure to the structure to how remuneration is structured within a company? So, my assumption is that if there is shared leadership, somehow this needs to translate into somehow shared remuneration. So, what is your take on this?
Yeah. There are several things, and I think we are not yet there where we want to be, but we are a good way further than we were. For example, if someone takes over leadership, a formal leadership role by being elected, obviously the salary increases. The moment this person gets voted out or steps down, then the first 3 months are always hell. Yeah? It's hell for the person because this person has to find the right place to understand what is my new role in the company and not the leader anymore. The successor, it's a huge disaster because whatever, and even the team has issues to absorbing this person because most of the time if kings get dethroned, they also get decapitalized. That's more or less have the impulse to give it back. But after these 3 months, things have settled and everything is perfect, most of the time. And then we go to this person and say, okay, what is now the salary you think is fair? This person has known the salary that he or she earns now, earned before, and knows more or less what the team earns. And then most of the time there comes a proposal that is somehow in between what they earned before and the average. And it's interesting, why do they go down with the salary? There's a feeling of fairness and they understand it, and even it's more or less something of gained life quality and all this stuff. And on the other side, we agree also to pay more because this person was very good, therefore it was elected as leader. And we can keep this person in the company and it doesn't leave, and is now a bridge between team and leadership, is a good mentor to the new leader, and so on. A lot of advantages why we say it's fair to pay more than a normal team member. But that's more or less a dual career salary around the corner and through the back store, whatever, but it works, yeah? But it's not yet where we want to be. Instead, we also have team bonuses. We got totally rid of individual bonuses, even the sales team, and we thought the sales team would be the worst, but they were one of the first that proposed by themselves they want to have a team bonus. Never thought that would happen. It's really cool. That means, yeah, these are elements, but at the end I think we will have to have something like a salary system that is more like you see nowadays in the gaming industry. The games themselves, if people are gaming, they earn power badges by doing certain tasks, and they define on one side the social status, on the other side some earnings. They get power badges and they get nuggets. Yeah? The nuggets they can spend, and the power badges are more or less a sign. It's like in the military, you have signs of honor or whatever. And I think we will have, because we will have less hierarchies, we will need to come back with some orders and so on, power badges that show I'm a really good guy. I did a lot of great stuff. Yeah? And therefore we will have these power badges and these nudges that will be a further development of our careers with titles, and with titles is salary, and with titles is social recognition. It will be somehow. I don't know how this will work at the end, if we will all have augmented reality, and then whenever I see you, I say, wow, this line of power badges, wow, he's the guru, and so on. If this will happen like that, or we'll have our social networks, and whenever I'm chatting with you, I see how many scores you have, I don't know. But somehow along these lines of what we will have to, it will be a more complicated system, but supported by technology that makes it and manageable again. And then it will be a breathing salary system. The more successful I am, the more salary I get, the less successful I am. And it also sounds a little bit Darwinistic. And I'm quite aware of that. That means as a society at least, and I think even as a company, we have to take care of the 10% of the people that cannot work in such a system, and we have to take care of them better than now. Yeah? It's really what we're talking about, minimum bedingungsloses Grundeinkommen, unconditional base income. That is bullshit, you cannot live with that. I think the people that really need it need much more money than we provide now, but there's a huge chunk of people that could if they want or if they need. We will come to the time that they need, and then they will have to become inventive, and they will become innovative, and they have to become their own entrepreneurs. And then we have to find models of an entrepreneurship that also accepts, okay, you're getting out of your golden cage, yeah? You understood. The job you're now having pays you more than you would earn in the marketplace. You open the door and you go out by yourself. Yeah? That's really honorable of you. And you could say stupid, because why do you give up your your well-paying job, that is an easy job, it's well deserved through the ranks, and now you get out. But if you have an agreement that you can say, okay, I now do my little enterprise within the enterprise, and if I'm successful, I'm also partly a shareholder of my enterprise, and if I'm successful, I even earn more than I earned in my golden cage. Then it's a deal that you could consider. Say, okay, I take a hit in my salary because I now become an entrepreneur. I run my own business within the business, and if I'm successful, I earn more than my golden cage. If I'm not successful, I earn less. I think we have to think along these lines, but it's not by far not finished in our thinking, and I have not found too many, but to be honest, salary is not the first instance we are now putting our energy on, because we have already too much running, and salary is really one of the topics where you can produce so much negative energy in a very short period of time. Therefore, it's really, you have to be quite careful doing such things.
Okay, very last question here, Liz.
How do you do that within, like, having these transferable teams and so on, with setting goals towards teams and individuals? I mean, how do you, there are these discussions about, like, these annual talks with your superiors or with your team, and that does not being seen so modern anymore. Yeah.
Well, we want a journey there. I wouldn't say we're at the end, but we started with annual talks and development goals and so on. They were connected also to your variable salary. Very classic. Then we said, it's not modern, it's all bullshit. Okay, we do just Scrum, we do it very agile. You have this backlog where you say what has to do, you make task picking, everything. And we more or less abolished the yearly talk. And now we are coming back and saying, okay, I think once a year to think through, to talk about my development, to take the time and to have an occasion to talk about it with other people and so on, it's very valuable. But we totally decouple it from any decision, be it career advancement, be it salary. That's just something that is for the person to develop herself or himself. That's feedback environment, you get tips, we have people coaches there, but it's totally decoupled from everything else. It's just to help people to develop and to have an occasion to talk about it. And the other thing, to define the goals and so on, that has to become more agile. That means we're working with backlogs in certain teams. In other teams, we're working with a very classic, there's a leader and distributes the things, knowing and discussing with people. There we have different ways, and I think it's also good to have different ways and how this works. I wouldn't say there's one size fits all solution to that. And for personal development also, we have the vision, and we didn't get it to fly yet, but we hope one day we will. That I say, okay, I have a very clear development goal. For example, I want to be more precise in my answers and want to make them shorter. Because I always have very long answers, and it's always a little bit boring for all the others. Therefore, my development goal is to make them shorter. And that means whenever I come out of a meeting, my app in my phone reminds me, do you want to ask the people for feedback? I say yes. My mobile knows whom I was meeting with. Right? They're all in the invitation. Then you get a notification, do you want to give feedback to Hermann? If you say yes, you get my question. Was I shorter and more precise with my answers? And then you can say yes, no, yes, no. Right? And then by the time I get a tracking and see, did I improve? And if I improved in a way that I say, that's okay, then I for myself make a checkbox, say, okay, now I've made it, and I chose my next target that I want to reach. And of course, you can always give me feedback, unquestioned, but that's also through the app that I get the notification that you say, hey, Maria wants to give me feedback. Do I want to receive this feedback? And I can say yes or no. And these are things that we're thinking through to make it more agile, also this development, not only once a year. But I came to the conclusion once a year to have an occasion to spend time and to think through that. It's important, but totally decoupling from all the consequences. It's something for the person to develop further himself.
I think this was a fabulous session, very thought-provoking, Hermann. I see a lot of ideas racing through your heads here. Notice the body language. I mean, you captured the audience here. I think it probably is a question of how much can I actually use of this? Where do I start? This is what I'm sensing here at the moment in the room. Hermann, thank you very much for having provided us with these thought-provoking ideas and suggestions and the clear answers to clear questions. Thank you very much, Hermann.
Thank you. Thank you for your questions.